Well, I think what we have is a formidably fragmented French political landscape with a strong extreme left, a stronger even extreme right, and a sort of strong centre. And this is a totally new configuration as parties who were dominated the French politics for 50 years, sort of centre right and centre left, have totally evaporated. So it's a big reshuffle. Second, I think the match on the 24th of April will be tight, close. I still believe Emmanuel Macron should win, but I'm not sure about this. It will depend a bit on this presidential debate that will take place next week, and which might be crucial. For the rest, I mean, the two candidates are totally opposed. Macron is a sort of social liberal, pro-European, pro-business, pro-reform, and Madame Le Pen is a very traditional nationalist, protectionist, sovereignist. So it's a very, very polarized debate. Again, I think Macron, at the end of the day, should win, and he's a well-known international quantity. I mean, he's been there for 5 years. People know him internationally, and I think markets will definitely like Macron and fear Madame Le Pen.
Well, looking at the programs of these two candidates, what do you think a Le Pen win, what will be the implications for France and France's voice in the world? Because we know that under Macron there was certain credibility taken back to France's voice on the international scene. So what would be the impact of a Le Pen win for this, but also for the EU more broadly?
I mean, it would be a totally different course. Madame Le Pen last time wanted to exit the euro. This time she has changed, but I mean, if you look at the detail of her program, it's a sort of Frexit-like program. And as far as the economy is concerned, you know, she wants basically to go back to a sovereignist, nationalist France, which I personally believe makes no sense in this world, but she's got support in the population, so I don't think she might win, but there is a danger.
Pascal, it's Karen jumping in from outside of Macron's headquarters. Can I ask you about Macron's plans for a bigger Europe, the green agenda that he's been pushing? How much of this would change if there is, in fact, President Le Pen?
I think you're right. Probably the main visible dividing line between Mr. Macron and Madame Le Pen is Europe. Macron wants more Europe. He sees a sort of continuum between France, Europe and the world. He has an open mind. He's pro-openness. Madame Le Pen is exactly the opposite. And it probably would be a big shock in Europe if she was to be elected. Not that we haven't had right-wing or even extreme right-wing governments in Europe. We have one in Hungary. We have one in Poland. But in both cases, these countries never thought of moving back on their European commitment. Madame Le Pen probably would.
Pascal, can I ask you about the French psychology here? Because we know that the French want change at surface level, but the practicalities of change makes it very uncomfortable for a lot of voters. If we do see President Macron re-elected, how much progress do you think he would make around pension reform, further changes to the labour force, welfare benefits, and in fact further tax cuts for business?
Well, that's a good question, but I think that Mr. Macron has taken his risks. He has clearly campaigned, for instance, with a retirement age of 65, which, true, a majority of French people do not like, but he's been very clear on this. So if he was to be elected, which I believe still is the normal scenario, then he would push this sort of reform forward. Again, he's been clear on this, and I don't think he will move back.
Mr. Lamy, Rosanna joining from London here. And with regards to globalization and trade, many countries, including France, are having to recalibrate their relationships with China, their relationships with Russia, especially with what's happening in Ukraine. So what should the candidates be bearing in mind with regards to keeping that balance with trade, but upholding the values of Europe?
I think this is what Macron would do. There is a bit of reshoring, there is a bit of deglobalization here and there, but there is also a lot of globalization going on in other areas. So I think if it's about Macron's stance, I don't think this will change. He's a pro-trade, pro-openness candidate. Of course, Madame Le Pen is exactly the other way round, and what she says has clearly an echo in part of the French population who believes basically globalization is not good for them. And, you know, we've seen plays of this kind in recent years with the UK Brexit, with the Trump election in 2016. So there is a sort of popular backlash against globalization in some of the West. Of course, it's a very different thing if you look at the rest of the world.
And so much of Europe's integration with Russia is to do with energy. So how would you assess France's current integration with Russia on that front, and the idea that the EU could back away from energy imports from Russia? How would that affect this race?
Well, I think the EU will back away from energy imports from Russia if Russian armies remain in Ukraine. It's a question of not whether, but when this will happen. In the case of France, France is less dependent than, for instance, Germany on Russian energy imports, not least because of the high proportion of nuclear domestic grown energy in the case of France. But overall, I think the Russian invasion of Ukraine will lead to Europe progressively severing its hydrocarbon and fossil fuel relationship with Russia. No doubt about this in my mind.